You need to sign over the pharmacy to me, Dad, or I'll petition the court to revoke your business license on medical grounds. My daughter Sarah stood in the dispensary of Wilson's pharmacy, her husband Derek's legal documents spread across the counter, where I'd filled prescriptions for 43 years. This registered pharmacist, who'd been too busy to help me care for her dying mother even once during the 4-year battle with ovarian cancer, was demanding I hand over our family's $2. 1 million pharmacy and the commercial property it sat on. 6 weeks ago, I'd buried my wife Helen alone in a February snowstorm. Sarah had been too preoccupied with a pharmaceutical conference in Banff to attend her own mother's funeral. Now, she was back with her financial advisor, husband's investment strategy, and her PharmD credentials as weapons against her grieving father. I should have crumbled, should have begged, should have been the confused old man they clearly expected. Instead, I smiled and walked to my office. Let me get you something first, sweetheart. What I brought back would end both their careers and their marriage. Because for 4 years, while they'd been building their professional empire in Vancouver, I'd been documenting everything. Subscribe to learn how I destroyed their carefully constructed lies. I remember the exact day everything shifted. March 12th, 2020. Helen had been experiencing abdominal pain for months, dismissing it as indigestion, when Dr. Patricia Morrison at Foothills Medical Center said the words, Stage 3, ovarian cancer. I watched my world shatter like ice on the Bow River. Sarah was completing her hospital pharmacy residency at Vancouver General. She'd married Derek Chen, a successful financial planner, 3 years earlier. Derek had always been distant from us. He'd grown up in West Vancouver's elite circles and often mentioned that family obligations complicated wealth building. When I called Sarah about Helen's diagnosis, she promised to come home immediately. But the next morning, she called back with a different message. Dad, Derek thinks it's better if we let the oncology team handle this. He's concerned about my exposure to the hospital environment during COVID, and I don't want to stress him out. That was the beginning of 4 years of Derek's influence, controlling every family decision. The bills started immediately. $8,700 a month for Helen's treatments, medications, and care. I'd been making $127,000 annually from the pharmacy, comfortable but not wealthy. The math was brutal. I couldn't afford full-time help and run the business alone, so I hired my nephew Thomas to manage the pharmacy 3 days a week, while I focused on Helen. I called Sarah 93 times that first year. I counted. She returned maybe 15 of them, always rushed, always apologetic, but with Derek's voice frequently audible in the background. Dad, I want to help, but Derek thinks it's better if we maintain financial boundaries. He says getting emotionally involved will impact our investment planning. Boundaries. That became Derek's favorite word. In one of the rare video calls Sarah answered in 2021, I could hear tension in her voice. Dad, seeing Mom like this destroys me. I remember her being so vibrant. And Derek says I should focus on our financial future instead of dwelling on difficult family situations. Sarah, she's not a difficult situation. She's your mother and she needs you now. I know, Dad, but it's just so hard. Derek says the stress is affecting my work performance. Christmas 2020. I set 4 places at the table, hoping desperately. Helen wore her favorite burgundy sweater, the one Sarah always said brought out her eyes. She'd been having a good day. When is Sarah coming? She asked, every few minutes. Sarah's text arrived at 3:30. Sorry, Dad. Derek booked us a surprise trip to Whistler. Give Mom my love. I discovered later from Derek's Instagram, photos of them at the Fairmont, champagne glasses raised. His caption read, Sometimes you need to escape family drama and just live. Number priorities. Number boundaries. Number living our best life. When I confronted Sarah about it, she was defensive. Dad, Derek didn't want me going back while Mom was deteriorating. He said watching her decline would damage my career focus and our financial planning business. By 2021, Helen's condition had worsened significantly. During one of the few video calls Sarah attempted that year, Helen asked about grandchildren. Children that didn't exist because Derek wasn't ready for kids with all this family instability draining resources. Sarah ended the call abruptly when Helen repeated the question. Mom, I can't let Derek see you like this. He thinks it's better to keep distance to avoid trauma. The medical costs kept climbing. Private nursing care, experimental treatments, medications not covered by Alberta Health. I remortgaged the pharmacy building twice, emptying my TFSA and RRSP accounts. When I sent Sarah copies of major medical bills, hoping she'd offer financial help, her responses were clinical. Dad, have you researched provincial assistance programs? Derek found some options online. Provincial assistance for her mother, the woman who'd worked alongside me for 30 years, building the pharmacy to pay for Sarah's university. Christmas 2022 was devastating. Helen had been asking for Sarah constantly. I decorated exactly as she used to, even put up Sarah's childhood ornaments, praying for a miracle visit. I called Sarah on Christmas Eve. Sweetheart, your mother's really struggling. She keeps asking for you. Could you fly home for even just 2 days? Dad, Derek booked us a wellness retreat in Tofino. He says I need to stop enabling your emotional dependence and focus on our partnership. Derek's Instagram that night showed them toasting champagne at the Wickaninnish Inn. His caption, finally learned to prioritize our relationship over family guilt. Number, self-care. Number, boundaries. Number, wealth mindset. The recording started in early 2023. I documented everything now. The ignored calls, the excuses, Helen's tears when Sarah didn't come. In one particularly painful conversation from spring 2023, Sarah's guilt finally surfaced. Dad, I know I should visit more, but every time I consider coming, Derek reminds me how toxic the situation is. He says watching Mom suffer isn't good for my mental health or our business focus. What about your mother's mental health, Sarah? I know, Dad. But Derek says professional caregivers can handle it better than family. He's researched this. May 2023. Sarah missed Helen's 62nd birthday for an investment conference Derek had organized in Toronto. September 2023, when Helen fell and fractured her pelvis. I spent 4 nights at the hospital with her. Sarah sent flowers with a card signed by both her and Derek. Thinking of you both. Love, Sarah and Derek. Derek had never met Helen in person during their 5 years of marriage. By Helen's final months, she'd stopped eating regularly. In her lucid moments, she'd stare at the pharmacy's front door with heartbreaking hope. Where's my girl? I want to see my girl. The last voicemail I left was January 28th, 2024. Sarah, your mother is dying. Doctor. Morrison says days at most. She's been asking for you constantly. Please, sweetheart, please come home. She called back 2 days later. Dad, I'm so sorry I missed your call. Derek and I were at a financial planning summit in Montreal. How's Mom doing? She died yesterday morning, Sarah. Your mother died yesterday morning. The silence stretched forever. Oh God, Dad, Derek said it wasn't critical yet based on your messages. Why didn't you make it clearer? 93 missed calls said otherwise. She couldn't make the funeral either. Derek thinks attending would be too traumatic for me given my guilt about not visiting more. He's concerned about my emotional stability affecting our business. I buried my wife of 40 years alone in a February blizzard, surrounded by customers who'd watched me fight this battle without my own daughter's support. That's when I knew exactly what I needed to do. 4 weeks after Helen's funeral, Sarah called. Not to check on me, not to share memories of her mother, but to discuss what Derek called my business succession crisis. I was sitting in Helen's chair, the leather recliner where she'd spent her final weeks. Her reading glasses were still on the side table, her Sudoku book half finished. Dad, Derek and I have been analyzing your situation. Those were her opening words. Not how are you holding up, but a clinical assessment delivered with her husband's financial authority. I'm grieving, Sarah. That's normal when you lose your wife. It's been 4 weeks, Dad. Derek did some research. He says, prolonged grief in men your age can indicate declining cognitive function. He thinks we need to take preventive action. Action. Derek had been researching me like a financial portfolio. I'm 65 years old, Sarah, not 95. Age isn't the only factor, Dad. Derek pointed out that the stress of caregiving, the financial strain, the isolation, these things damage decision-making ability. He's concerned about your capacity to manage the pharmacy safely. I pressed record on my phone. This conversation felt critical to preserve. What kind of decisions worry Derek, sweetheart? Well, for starters, you're sitting on $2.1 million in commercial real estate and business assets while drowning in medical debt. Derek ran the numbers. The pharmacy building and business are worth at least $2.1 million. He says you could sell, clear your debts, retire comfortably. Derek had done his homework. Property assessments, my financial vulnerability, the most efficient extraction method. This pharmacy is my life, Sarah. It's where your mother and I built everything together, where she worked beside me for 30 years. And that's exactly the kind of emotional thinking that concerns Derek. You're not being rational, Dad. You're letting sentiment override financial logic. Sentiment. Derek was calling my love for Helen sentiment, and Sarah was repeating his words. Your mother died in the apartment upstairs, Sarah. In our bedroom, holding my hand. You think I should just sell that away? Dad, Mom is gone. Derek says clinging to physical spaces isn't healthy. It's actually a symptom of complicated grief that can progress to serious cognitive problems. Every word sounded rehearsed, like Derek had coached her through this script. Are you saying I'm mentally incompetent? I'm saying Derek thinks you're showing signs of impaired judgment. And as a pharmacist, I have to agree from a medical perspective. The responsible thing would be to transfer the business into competent hands before you make decisions you'll regret. Competent hands? You mean yours and Derek's? Dad, Derek has his certified financial planner designation and investment management experience. I'm a registered pharmacist. We understand asset management better than someone in your emotional state. The recording device was capturing everything. Her tone, Derek's influence, the complete absence of empathy for a man who'd just lost his wife. So what exactly are you proposing? Sign the pharmacy and property over to us. Derek will set up a family trust, manage the sale, ensure you get the psychiatric care you clearly need. You can stay in the apartment, of course, but under proper oversight. Oversight. Like I was a patient in her hospital. And if I refuse? The pause was revealing. When Sarah spoke again, I could almost hear Derek coaching her. Dad, Derek researched the regulatory requirements. As a healthcare professional, I'd be obligated to report cognitive decline in an elderly pharmacy owner, especially one who's demonstrated poor judgment about business operations and self-care. The Alberta College of Pharmacy takes these reports seriously. You're saying you'd have my license revoked. Derek thinks we should have you properly evaluated by qualified professionals first. If they determine you can't manage the business safely, then yes, the college might need to investigate. Business license revocation. Derek's financial expertise was showing through Sarah's pharmaceutical threats. Sarah, I took care of your mother for 4 years while you were building your career with Derek. I managed everything. And now you think I'm incompetent. That's exactly Derek's point, Dad. He says the stress of caregiving has clearly affected your cognitive function. You're not the same person you were 4 years ago, and we can't ignore that. She was right about one thing. I wasn't the same person. But not in the way Derek thought. I need time to think about this. Of course. But Dad, Derek says not to delay too long. He's concerned that every day you wait, your judgment could deteriorate further. My judgment. Derek had diagnosed me through Sarah, found me guilty of grief, and prescribed signing away my life's work as treatment. I'll call you soon, Sarah. Good. And Dad, Derek wants you to know this comes from a place of love and financial responsibility. We're trying to protect you from making mistakes you'll regret. Love. After 4 years of Derek keeping Sarah away from her dying mother, he was calling attempted theft love. I hung up and stopped the recording. 18 minutes and 47 seconds of my daughter systematically dismantling my competence under her husband's direction. But what struck me most wasn't Sarah's cruelty. It was her complete surrender to Derek's agenda. Every argument was his. Every justification came from his financial analysis. Even her pharmaceutical authority was being wielded at his instruction. The woman who'd been too traumatized to attend her dying mother's funeral was now clinical enough to steal from her grieving father, all because her husband demanded it. I sat in Helen's chair for a long time, thinking about the daughter I'd raised versus the woman Derek had molded. Sarah had always been easily influenced, but I'd hoped marriage would strengthen her, not turn her into someone else's weapon. Then I picked up the phone and called James Mitchell, our family lawyer for 30 years. James, it's Robert Wilson. I need to discuss urgent legal matters regarding my daughter and her husband. The financial war Derek had started was about to end very differently than he'd calculated. James Mitchell's office in Eau Claire felt like sanctuary. I'd been there dozens of times for business contracts and estate planning. Robert, I'm deeply sorry about Helen, James said, his weathered face showing genuine grief. Thank you. She always said you were the only lawyer in Calgary who treated small business owners like human beings instead of billing opportunities. I placed my phone on his mahogany desk and pressed play. 18 minutes of Sarah and Derek's coordinated assault on my competence. James's expression darkened with each passing minute. Jesus, Robert, this isn't just elder abuse. It's a calculated financial and professional conspiracy. Your son-in-law has clearly researched business seizure tactics, while your daughter provides the healthcare justification. Can they actually succeed? They can try, but it would require independent medical evaluations, pharmacy college investigations, substantial evidence of cognitive impairment, or unsafe practice. Derek's financial background gives him dangerous knowledge, but from what I've seen in our decades of working together, their case would be extremely difficult to prove. Some tension left my shoulders. What are my options? James opened his legal pad. We could wait and defend, but given their coordination, I'd recommend offense. Document everything. Build a comprehensive record of their behavior, and consider protecting your assets before they can challenge your competence. I thought about 4 years of evidence sitting in my apartment. Missed calls, broken promises, documented abandonment, while Derek actively encouraged Sarah's absence. James, what if I told you I had 4 years of evidence showing Sarah abandoned her dying mother at Derek's direction? Phone records, recordings, financial documents, proving I handled everything alone while Derek kept her away, using emotional manipulation and financial pressure. His pen stopped moving. That would be devastating to their credibility. Healthcare professional abandonment orchestrated by a financial advisor's spouse. That's career-ending territory for both of them. And what if I wanted to sell the pharmacy? Completely. You're within your rights, though. He paused. If you're considering what I think you're considering, I'd been planning this since Helen's funeral. The pharmacy felt like a mausoleum without her. But more importantly, I'd realized something. Sarah and Derek were right about one thing. I wasn't the same person I'd been 4 years ago. I was stronger, and I was done being manipulated. I want to sell the pharmacy in the building, James, to the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Helen always said if her suffering could help other families, it would give her illness meaning. James's eyes widened. Robert, that's a $2.1 million donation. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. And Sarah and Derek? They can find out with everyone else. We spent 3 hours working through details. The pharmacy and property would transfer to the Alberta Cancer Foundation at fair market value, funding a new patient support center in Helen's name. I'd retain apartment residence rights for 1 year while determining next steps. There's one more thing, I said, as we finished paperwork. I want Sarah and Derek to learn about this sale in a very specific way, and I explained my plan. James listened with growing amazement. Robert, it's certainly poetic justice. But are you prepared for the public nature of this confrontation? James, Derek researched how to steal my pharmacy using Sarah's PharmD as leverage. Sarah threatened to have my license revoked so they could inherit assets I was supposedly too mentally ill to manage. I think some public accountability is exactly what they both deserve. He nodded slowly. Sarah's pharmaceutical career could be seriously damaged by this exposure. Good. She spent 4 years ignoring her dying mother at Derek's financial direction, then tried to defraud her grieving father. Her career deserves to be damaged. I signed papers transferring ownership to the foundation, effective in 45 days. The announcement would be made at the Alberta Cancer Foundation's annual fundraising gala, an event Sarah never missed. Always networking for hospital pharmacy positions, while Derek worked the room for potential wealth management clients. One question, Robert. Are you prepared for the possibility that this destroys your relationship with Sarah permanently? I considered that. James, my relationship with Sarah was destroyed 4 years ago when she chose Derek's financial comfort over her mother's love. I'm just making that destruction official. Driving back to the pharmacy through downtown Calgary, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. Helen would have supported this decision completely. She'd always believed in fighting for what mattered, especially when it was difficult. That evening, I began organizing 4 years of evidence. Phone records, medical bills, recordings of Sarah's excuses, and Derek's influence. Every missed call, every broken promise, every Instagram post showing their luxury lifestyle while Helen suffered. The evidence room, Helen's old craft room upstairs, became my war room. 4 years of documentation covered every surface, but now I was organizing it differently. Not just Sarah's abandonment, but Derek's orchestration of it. The smoking gun was my phone's voicemail archive. I'd kept every message, thinking someday I might delete them for storage space. Now I understood why I'd never been able to press delete. The earliest recording was from April 2020, 6 weeks after Helen's diagnosis. Hey Dad, it's Sarah. Derek and I talked, and he thinks it's better if we don't visit during the pandemic. He says inconsistent contact while Mom's immunocompromised might confuse her treatment plan. We'll check in by phone instead. Even then, it was Derek thinks and Derek says. By 2021, the pattern was unmistakable. Every excuse came filtered through Derek's financial analysis or business concerns. I spent 5 days creating a timeline. Sarah's words on one side, Derek's Instagram posts on the other. Christmas 2021. Sarah's voicemail said, Derek planned a tax planning retreat for year-end. He's worried about my stress levels affecting our business growth. Derek's Instagram that same day. Sometimes you have to choose financial success over family guilt. Number boundaries. Number wealth building. Number priorities. The hospital visitor logs were devastating when cross-referenced with Derek's social media activity. During Helen's 7 hospitalizations, Derek posted 63 times from restaurants, ski resorts, and business conferences. Always with Sarah, always during his mother-in-law's medical crises. But I needed to understand their vulnerabilities beyond just family abandonment. So I researched them the way they'd researched me. Sarah worked at Coast Mountain Pharmacy in Vancouver, a prestigious chain with expansion plans. Her LinkedIn showed promotions and professional development. Derek's financial planning firm, Chen Wealth Management, serviced high-net-worth clients. His Instagram revealed expensive tastes, luxury cars, designer clothes, exclusive restaurants, ski trips to Whistler and Europe. More importantly, Derek's firm's website emphasized family values and ethical financial planning. Several recent posts highlighted their work with estate planning and elder care financial strategies. The irony was suffocating. I started making strategic calls. First to Dr. Patricia Morrison, Helen's oncologist. Mr. Wilson, I've been thinking about you since Helen's passing. How are you managing, doctor? Morrison, I need to ask you about something sensitive. It involves Sarah and her husband Derek. I explained their coordinated threats, their plans to have me declared incompetent and seize my business. Dr. Morrison listened without interruption. Mr. Wilson, in 4 years of treating your wife, I met Sarah exactly twice. Once at the initial consultation, and once when I specifically requested family presence for a critical treatment decision. I remember asking about family support, and Sarah mentioned her husband thought professional distance was healthier. I documented concerns about the lack of family involvement. Would you provide a statement about that? If it helps protect you from what sounds like financial elder abuse combined with professional credential misuse. Absolutely. Next, I called Thomas, my nephew who'd been managing the pharmacy. Uncle Rob, how are you holding up? I explained Sarah and Derek's scheme. Thomas's reaction was immediate and angry. That manipulative. I'm sorry, Uncle Rob, but I was there. I saw how hard you worked caring for Aunt Helen. How many times you called Sarah begging her to come home. And I remembered Derek's one visit to the pharmacy. He spent the whole time calculating property values and asking about your retirement plans. Sarah barely looked at her own mother. Would you document that? Absolutely. And Uncle Rob, the pharmacy staff all know what happened. We all watched you sacrifice everything while Sarah lived her perfect Vancouver life. The character witnesses mounted quickly. Our family physician, our accountant, longtime customers, all shocked by the coordinated nature of Sarah and Derek's scheme. But my breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Nguyen from the apartment next door knocked Thursday evening. Robert, I hope you don't mind, but I've been worried since I overheard that argument with the real estate agent. I did some research on your son-in-law. My daughter works in finance in Vancouver. She says Derek's been bragging about coming into a major inheritance soon. He's apparently already been shopping for commercial properties in Vancouver, telling colleagues his father-in-law is finally being realistic about his limitations. The pieces clicked together. This wasn't just about the pharmacy. Derek had been planning and bragging about stealing from me while I was still grieving my wife. Mrs. Nguyen, would your daughter be willing to document what Derek said? Oh, Robert, it's worse. She says Derek sent emails about it to potential investment partners. My daughter works in compliance at his firm. She's seen internal communications about potential conflicts of interest when financial advisors benefit from elderly client assets. Friday evening, I called Sarah. Time to let them think they were winning while I gathered final evidence. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about what you and Derek said. About the pharmacy, about my mental state. I'm glad you're being rational about this, Dad. I'm scared, Sarah. Maybe Derek's right. Maybe I'm not thinking clearly anymore. I could hear her relief. It's okay, Dad. Derek's already contacted estate planning specialists and business brokers. We're going to take care of everything. Of course he had. Derek found a really good elder business consultant who specializes in these transitions, Sarah continued. He's confident we can have everything transferred smoothly within 60 days. Maximum value for everyone. When do you want to move forward? Soon, Dad. Derek says the longer we wait, the more opportunity there is for you to make mistakes that could complicate the sale process or damage the business value. Okay, sweetheart. Whatever you and Derek think is best. After hanging up, I sat in Helen's chair and smiled. They thought they'd won. Sarah was probably already telling Derek about my surrender, and he was probably already calculating their net gain. They had no idea that every conversation was being recorded, every threat documented, and every piece of evidence organized for maximum public impact. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it at the Cancer Foundation Gala, where Derek's financial colleagues and Sarah's pharmacy colleagues would witness their complete destruction. 3 weeks later, Derek made his move. I was at the pharmacy counter filling prescriptions when I saw his silver Mercedes SUV pull up outside. 2 people climbed out. Sarah stepped from the passenger seat first. Tall, blonde, designer blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She moved with the predatory confidence of someone about to close a profitable deal. The business valuator followed, carrying measuring equipment and a portfolio. Even from inside, I could see Derek directing the operation like a general commanding troops. He pointed out features of the building with proprietary confidence, taking photos with his phone. The valuator measured the storefront, while Derek peered through windows like he was already planning renovations. Mrs. Nguyen was at her window, close enough to observe their conversation. I stayed at the counter, watching through the pharmacy's front window as they walked around the property. Thomas emerged from the back. Uncle Rob, should I? Just watch, Thomas. Document everything you can. I walked out slowly, timing my arrival for maximum impact. Dad, there you are, Sarah called out with forced cheerfulness. I'd like you to meet Richard Patterson from Commercial Properties, Alberta. Derek found him. He specializes in these kinds of family business transitions. Richard extended a professional hand. Mr. Wilson, your daughter and son-in-law have explained your situation. I'm very sorry for your loss. My situation. Derek had briefed him thoroughly. painted the picture of an incompetent old man whose family was heroically rescuing him from his own poor judgment. "Thank you," I said quietly, "though I'm confused about why you're here." Derek stepped forward smoothly. "Robert, we discussed this. The pharmacy sale, remember? I researched several valuators, and Richard has excellent credentials for handling succession planning. He spoke to me like I was a confused child, his financial training evident in every calculated word. But Derek, I never agreed to sell the pharmacy." Sarah and Derek exchanged a look, the kind investment partners share when a deal isn't cooperating with the predetermined outcome. "Dad," Sarah said patiently, "we had a very clear conversation about this. You said you were scared, that you couldn't handle the business anymore, that you wanted Derek and me to take care of everything. The gaslighting was textbook perfect, public, confident, designed to make me question my own memory while establishing their version of events for witnesses. I'm sorry," I said louder now, "but I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is my life's work. My wife and I built this together. I'm not selling anything." Richard looked uncomfortable, but Derek stepped in smoothly. "Robert, this is exactly what we've been concerned about. The confusion, the memory issues." Sarah explained that grief can sometimes affect cognitive function in older business owners, especially after the stress of prolonged caregiving. Derek's financial expertise was showing. He was building a public record of my alleged incompetence while positioning himself as the concerned family member helping with a difficult transition. Mrs. Nguyen had stopped pretending to clean her window. She was listening intently, her face growing more concerned by the minute. "I'm not confused," I said clearly. "I never agreed to any sale." "Dad, please," Sarah interrupted, embarrassment creeping into her voice. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Making what harder?" Thomas called out, stepping closer from the pharmacy entrance. Derek turned on his professional charm. "Just some family financial planning, Thomas. Nothing that concerns the staff. Thomas is my nephew and assistant manager. He's lived next to me for 5 years. Thomas, do you think I'm mentally incompetent to run this pharmacy?" "Not even close, Uncle Rob. You're the sharpest pharmacist I know." Derek's smile tightened. "With respect, Thomas, family members aren't always the best judges of cognitive decline, especially in workplace settings. That's why we need professional assessments." "I think we should reschedule," Richard interrupted, backing toward his car. "This doesn't seem like the right time for a property evaluation." As Richard drove away, Derek's composure finally cracked slightly. "This isn't over, Robert. Sarah's professional assessment stands, and I've already researched our legal and regulatory options." Mrs. Nguyen was still watching, and I knew she'd remember every word of Derek's threat. "We'll see about that," I said calmly. Derek's public humiliation in front of Mrs. Nguyen and Thomas triggered a sophisticated damage control campaign. Within days, he was working every angle to protect both his financial advisory reputation and their planned inheritance grab. It started with social media warfare. Derek, who usually posted carefully curated business success content, suddenly became the devoted son-in-law. Posts appeared about supporting family through difficult health transitions and making hard decisions with love and financial wisdom. The posts were masterfully crafted. Derek managed to portray himself as both the caring family member and the financial professional, forced to make difficult choices about an aging relative's business competency. To anyone who didn't know the truth, he looked like a man heroically managing a complex family financial crisis. But Derek's real strategy was more insidious. Dr. Morrison called me 5 days after the business valuator incident. "Mr. Wilson, I've been seeing concerning activity in professional healthcare forums. Your son-in-law has been posting in financial advisor networks about coordinating medical financial interventions in elder business succession cases." "What do you mean?" "He's discussing your situation in private wealth management forums, seeking advice about family members who resist appropriate succession planning. He's building a financial coalition, while Sarah builds a healthcare one." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just theft. It was a coordinated professional conspiracy. James Mitchell called that same evening. "Robert, the legal community is small. Word is spreading that Derek Chen is shopping around for attorneys willing to pursue an aggressive business succession case. He's apparently promised it will be straightforward because he has healthcare backing from his pharmacist wife. How much time do I have? If Derek files anything with the pharmacy, college, or courts, investigations could begin immediately. And he's smart. He's building a paper trail of your alleged incompetence, while positioning himself as the reluctant but responsible family member protecting business integrity. I spent the next morning making strategic calls. First to Margaret Thornton, director of the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Margaret, I need to arrange a press conference for a major charitable donation. Robert, what are you planning? A $2.1 million donation to cancer research. In Helen's name, I want maximum publicity, media coverage, foundation board present, and I want it announced at your annual gala. That's incredible, Robert. When? Next month. Your spring fundraising gala. I want it announced in front of the entire healthcare community and any financial advisors who might be present. My second call was to Thomas. Thomas, I need you to spread word through the pharmacy community. Robert Wilson is making a major announcement at the Cancer Foundation Gala. Anyone who knew Helen or cares about the pharmacy should attend. Word spread through Calgary's healthcare circles like wildfire. A $2.1 million donation was major news, especially from a community pharmacist. The foundation arranged press coverage and VIP attendance. Derek found out Tuesday when a colleague at his wealth management firm mentioned seeing the foundation's press release about a major donor announcement. Sarah called me that afternoon, barely concealed panic in her voice. Dad, Derek saw something about an announcement at the Cancer Foundation. Something involving Mom's name. That's right, sweetheart. I thought it was time to honor your mother properly. What kind of announcement? You'll find out at the gala next month. I hope you and Derek can both attend. The entire pharmacy community has been invited, along with several financial advisory professionals. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Dad, please tell me you're not making major financial decisions without consulting Derek and me first. Why would I need to consult you, Sarah? Derek said I was mentally incompetent, remember? Another long pause. Dad, we need to talk before the gala. Derek thinks I'm afraid I'm too busy this month preparing my presentation. See you at the gala, sweetheart. I hung up and smiled. Derek's financial expertise was about to work against him in ways he'd never calculated. His professional network would witness his complete destruction, along with Sarah's pharmacy colleagues. The hunter had become the hunted, and Derek was finally beginning to understand that he wasn't dealing with a confused old man anymore. He was dealing with someone who'd been building a case against him for 4 years. The night before the gala, I sat in Helen's chair one final time, surrounded by 4 years of evidence. Tomorrow would destroy both Sarah's pharmaceutical career and Derek's financial advisory reputation, but tonight belonged to the careful accounting of their coordinated betrayal. The file folders were labeled by year, each documenting another layer of Derek's orchestrated abandonment campaign. I opened 2020, the year everything began. 93 missed calls from me to Sarah. I'd counted them 3 times, then had James's assistant verify from phone company records. Her return call rate, 16%, and only when Derek wasn't directing her responses. The voicemails told the real story. April 2020. Dad. Derek researched pandemic protocols. He thinks family visits during active treatment can actually increase infection risk. We should let the medical team handle it. May 2020. Dad, Derek's concerned about my emotional health affecting our business expansion. He says watching Mom deteriorate isn't good for our financial planning focus. Derek's influence was documented from day one. Medical bills from 2020 totaled $104,000. Sarah and Derek's financial contribution, $0. I moved to 2021, cross-referencing Sarah's excuses with Derek's social media activity. Thanksgiving week, 2021. Sarah's voicemail claimed Derek planned a financial planning conference in Toronto. Derek's Instagram from that same trip. Sometimes you have to choose business growth over family obligations. Number boundaries, number wealth mindset, number priorities. 41 photos from their conference, while Helen spent Thanksgiving asking why her daughter wouldn't come home. 2022 brought Helen's first major health crisis, pneumonia that required ICU admission. 8 days she fought for her life. The visitor log showed my name 73 times. Thomas visited 9 times. Mrs. Nguyen brought flowers 4 times. Sarah's name, 0 entries. But Derek's Instagram showed their location throughout Helen's crisis. Wine tasting in Okanagan Valley, while his mother-in-law was on oxygen. By 2023, Derek's strategy was fully developed. He'd convinced Sarah that her mother's illness was toxic to their marriage and business growth. The evidence was in their own messages, screenshots from Sarah's phone I'd seen during one of her brief visits. A text from Derek to Sarah, "Your dad is manipulating you with guilt. My research shows prolonged exposure to terminal illness in family members can cause secondary trauma that affects business performance. We need to maintain boundaries for our financial health." Sarah's response, "You're right. I'll tell Dad we can't visit as often." Derek's reply, "Not, can't visit as often. We need complete separation until she's gone. I've talked to other advisors who've dealt with similar estate situations. Family emotional involvement complicates wealth transfer." He'd researched abandonment strategies like a financial investment plan. 2023 and early 2024 showed the pattern perfected. Every holiday excuse came filtered through Derek's business recommendations. Christmas 2023. Sarah claimed Derek's financial advisor recommended avoiding family trauma during tax planning season. Derek's Instagram that Christmas. Learning to prioritize our financial future over family guilt. Best business decision ever. Number wealth building, number boundaries, number success. The financial devastation was staggering. $387,000 in total medical expenses over those 4 years. All while Derek posted about luxury purchases, European vacations, and investment properties funded by their combined professional incomes. But the cruelest evidence was Derek's manipulation of Sarah's pharmaceutical ethics. In a recorded phone call from late 2023, Sarah finally admitted the truth. "Dad, I want to visit Mom, but Derek says it's not good for our business focus. He researched caregiver burnout statistics and thinks I'm showing symptoms just from the phone stress. He made me promise to prioritize our wealth building." Sarah, "You haven't visited your mother in almost 3 years. I know, Dad, but Derek says that proves I'm making the right choice for our financial future." Derek had convinced Sarah that abandoning her dying mother was actually good business strategy. The final folder contained the smoking gun, Derek's own words captured during a speakerphone conversation. Sarah had called about Helen's fall, and I'd heard Derek coaching her in the background. "Tell him we can't afford to get emotionally involved. Remind him that, as a pharmacist, you need to maintain professional boundaries even with family illness." When Sarah hesitated, Derek's voice came clearly through the phone. "Sarah, we've discussed this. Your mother's condition is terminal anyway. Getting attached now will just complicate the estate transfer when she dies. Think about our business expansion plans. Our business expansion. While Helen was frightened and in pain, Derek was calculating inheritance timelines. I'd compiled 23 character witness statements, documenting my mental competence and Sarah's absence. Dr. Morrison's medical notes showed Helen asking for Sarah during every appointment in her final year. Thomas's statement detailed my consistent professional judgment running the pharmacy. But the most damning evidence was the recorded threats. 18 minutes of Sarah and Derek's coordinated plan to have me declared incompetent so they could seize my business. The moral accounting was complete. 4 years of Derek's orchestrated abandonment, documented with legal precision. Tomorrow, his professional colleagues would hear exactly how he'd used his financial expertise to manipulate his wife into abandoning her dying mother, then tried to defraud her grieving father. Helen deserved justice. Tomorrow, she would finally get it. Gala night arrived clear and crisp, the Bow River reflecting lights from the Telus Convention Center. I dressed carefully in my best charcoal suit, the one Helen had bought me for our 40th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was wearing it to defend her memory against our own daughter and her husband. The ballroom was larger than expected. Margaret Thornton had outdone herself. Calgary Herald reporters lined the back wall. CBC Calgary had sent a camera crew. The foundation's entire board sat in front rows, along with major donors and senior healthcare professionals. I spotted Sarah and Derek immediately. They sat with a group from her pharmacy chain, Derek's designer suit and confident posture, suggesting he expected a routine family donation ceremony. Sarah looked nervous, but Derek appeared completely composed, probably viewing this as another networking opportunity. Dr. Patricia Morrison sat nearby. Several financial advisors from Derek's professional network had attended, likely colleagues curious about the major donation from a community pharmacy owner. Margaret introduced me warmly, emphasizing my 43 years serving Calgary, my dedication as a caregiver during Helen's battle with cancer, and my long-standing commitment to the community. I stepped to the podium and looked out at 270 people, mostly healthcare professionals and business leaders who understood both the cost of cancer and the importance of family support. Thank you all for coming. My name is Robert Wilson. 6 weeks ago, I lost my wife Helen to ovarian cancer after a 4-year battle. Tonight, I'm announcing a $2.1 million donation to establish the Helen Wilson Patient Support Center. Applause filled the ballroom. I saw Sarah's face register shock, then confusion. Derek's expression remained controlled, but his eyes had sharpened with calculation. He was probably wondering how this affected their business seizure plans. This donation represents the sale of Wilson's pharmacy and the commercial property it occupies. The pharmacy where Helen and I worked side by side for 30 years, where we built our life together, and where she spent her final days in the apartment we shared upstairs. I gestured towards Sarah. Several colleagues smiled warmly at her, assuming this was a proud family moment. But this donation is about more than cancer research funding. It's about honoring true caregivers, the family members who sacrifice everything for their loved ones, often without recognition, support, or even acknowledgement. Dr. Morrison nodded approvingly. This was exactly the message the healthcare community embraced. Over 4 years, I learned that caregiving isn't about professional credentials or medical knowledge. It's about showing up day after day, year after year, even when it's difficult, even when it costs everything. The room grew quiet, sensing a shift in tone. Unfortunately, not everyone understands this responsibility. Some people believe financial planning can substitute for personal commitment. Others use their professional credentials to justify abandonment. Derek's composure cracked slightly. He was beginning to understand this wasn't the ceremony he'd expected. 4 weeks ago, my daughter Sarah and her husband Derek called to discuss my mental competence. They suggested my grief indicated cognitive impairment affecting my business judgment. They recommended I sign over my pharmacy to them for my own protection and for proper financial management. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Dr. Morrison's expression shifted from warm approval to serious concern. Derek's colleagues from the financial advisory community were paying closer attention. Sarah felt that as a registered pharmacist, she was qualified to assess my mental state from Vancouver. Derek, as a certified financial planner, researched the legal requirements for business succession based on alleged cognitive decline. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. I'd like to share part of their coordinated plan with you. Sarah started to rise. Dad, this isn't appropriate. Please, Sarah. Margaret Thornton interrupted firmly. Let your father finish. I pressed play. Sarah's voice filled the ballroom, clinical and rehearsed, with Derek's influence evident in every calculated phrase. Dad, Derek thinks you're showing signs of impaired judgment. The responsible thing would be to transfer the business into competent hands before you make irreversible mistakes. Competent hands? You mean yours and Derek's? Dad, Derek has his CFP designation and investment management experience. I'm a registered pharmacist. We understand asset management better than someone in your emotional state. Derek's voice could be heard coaching in the background. Tell him about the regulatory options, Sarah. Remind him about the pharmacy college investigation process. The recording continued for 4 excruciating minutes. Sarah's pharmaceutical threats, Derek's financial strategy, their coordinated plan to seize my business while I grieved my wife. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Derek's colleagues were staring at him with undisguised shock. Financial advisors were taking notes, probably considering the ethics implications. Now, I continued, I'd like to provide context for their professional assessment of my competence. I opened my presentation folder. During Helen's 4-year illness, I called Sarah 93 times. She returned 15 of my calls, a response rate of 16%. However, the real story is in the voicemails she left. I pressed play again. Sarah's voice from 2021, Dad, Derek, researched caregiver dynamics. He thinks family visits during active treatment actually increase patient stress and complicate professional care protocols. Then Derek's Instagram post from that same week displayed on the ballroom screen. Sometimes you have to choose business growth over family guilt. Number boundaries, number wealth mindset. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Over 4 years, Helen was hospitalized 7 times. These hospital visitor logs show I was present for every admission, every procedure, every consultation. They also show that Sarah visited her dying mother exactly 0 times. Several people turned to stare at Sarah. Her face was flushed red, but Derek remained defiant, his financial training keeping him composed under scrutiny. The financial cost of Helen's care totaled $387,000. I paid every penny while Sarah and Derek posted about luxury vacations, investment properties, and business expansion funded by their combined professional incomes. I pulled out Derek's social media screenshots. These posts from Derek's Instagram were made during Helen's most critical episodes. This wine tasting in Okanagan was posted while Helen was in ICU with pneumonia. This ski trip to Whistler was during the weekend she had emergency surgery. Derek's colleagues were now openly staring at him. One was on her phone, probably calling their firm's ethics department. But perhaps most telling is how Derek orchestrated this abandonment using his financial expertise. I played another recording. Derek's voice coaching Sarah. Your dad is manipulating you with guilt. My research shows prolonged exposure to terminal illness affects business performance. We need complete separation for our financial health. The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Sarah shot to her feet. This is a violation of privacy. Those recordings were made without consent. Actually, Mrs. Chen, James Mitchell's voice came from the back of the ballroom. In Alberta, one-party consent applies to recording conversations. Your father consented by participating in the calls. And these recordings document attempted fraud and elder abuse, which are criminal matters. James had arrived as my backup, and Derek's face went pale as he recognized the legal trap he'd walked into. Furthermore, I continued, Derek spent 4 years convincing my daughter that abandoning her dying mother was sound financial strategy, while he researched how to steal from her grieving father. I turned to look directly at both of them. When Helen was dying, I left Sarah a voicemail, explaining she had days at most. She called back 2 days later to learn her mother had already passed. Her excuse? Derek had convinced her that her mother's condition wasn't critical enough to interrupt their business conference in Montreal. Dr. Morrison was staring at Sarah with disgust. One of the pharmacy chain executives stood up. Sarah, I think we need to discuss your employment status. My office Monday morning. Derek finally lost his composure completely. This is character assassination. Robert is clearly having a breakdown and fabricating stories to manipulate public opinion. Mr. Chen, one of his colleagues called out, standing. Perhaps you should stop talking. You're making this worse for both of you. I'm finishing now, I said calmly. The Helen Wilson Patient Support Center will open next year, funded by the pharmacy and property where she spent her final years surrounded by people who actually cared about her. Thank you. The applause was scattered and uncertain, but dozens of people approached me afterward with support and condolences. As I headed for the exit, Derek cornered me in the hallway, his professional mask finally gone. You've destroyed us both, Robert. Sarah's pharmacy career, my advisory practice, our entire business plan. No, Derek. You destroyed yourselves when you chose wealth building over basic human decency. I just documented it. Sarah appeared beside him, tears streaming for the first time in 4 years. Dad, I'm so sorry. Derek convinced me that staying away was better financially, and I was too weak to see what was happening. It's too late for apologies, Sarah. Mrs. Nguyen was waiting for me outside, tears in her eyes. Robert, Helen would be so proud. You honored her memory and stood up for what's right. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. 8 months later, I stood in the Helen Wilson Patient Support Center, watching staff prepare for the grand opening. The gleaming facility stretched across 5,000 square feet, funded entirely by the pharmacy sale. Dr. Patricia Morrison had been appointed medical director. She found me there that morning, reviewing the dedication plaque. Robert, this is remarkable. Helen would be overwhelmed by what you've accomplished. She always said if her suffering could help other families, it would give her illness meaning. The aftermath had been swift and comprehensive. The pharmacy college suspended Sarah's license, pending an ethics investigation. Her employer terminated her position after the ethics board opened formal proceedings. Derek's financial advisory career imploded even faster. Chen Wealth Management lost its major clients within weeks. His professional designation was under review for ethics violations. No wealth management firm wanted an advisor who'd orchestrated elder abandonment and attempted financial fraud. But the most unexpected consequence came 3 months after the announcement. Sarah called on a Tuesday evening, her voice broken. Dad, Derek left me. He said the scandal destroyed his business, and he couldn't be married to someone whose family publicly humiliated him. He filed for divorce last week. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but recognition of her pain. Dad, I realize now how much Derek controlled my decisions. I was afraid of disappointing him, afraid of choosing family over our business plans. And he made it so easy to stay away, to rationalize abandoning Mom. Sarah, your mother died asking for you. That can't be undone. I know. But Dad, could we maybe try to rebuild something? I want to volunteer at the support center, maybe help other families avoid what happened to us. I considered her request carefully. The center needed volunteers, and Sarah's pharmaceutical background could be valuable. But trust, once shattered, required time to rebuild. Sarah, we can start with the volunteer work, but our relationship, if there ever is one again, will be earned through consistent action, not inherited through apologies. I understand, Dad. I'll do whatever it takes. For Mom's memory, I moved into a comfortable condo near the Bow River, walking distance from the support center where I now volunteer as a patient advocate. The Helen Wilson Patient Support Center published its first annual report showing significant improvements in family caregiver support and patient outcomes. Some boundaries, once established, protect what matters most. Others, carefully reconstructed through genuine change and consistent effort, might offer hope for redemption. But that redemption must be earned, not demanded. And it starts with acknowledging the damage done and committing to become someone better than who you were.